Hi everyone, a very good afternoon to you all. My name is Divya Mahajan and I would like to welcome you all to the session on how to generate profits from Google Display Ads. In this session, we will cover some of the changes that are moving the industry and talk about how you can make the most from the current opportunities and how Google can help you. So we have Chandrasekhar to lead the session today. And Chandrasekhar is a display product expert with 6+ years of experience in online advertising. He has worked with top AdWords customers on helping them meet business goals via Display Network on Google Display Network. So I'll just hand over the session to Chandrasekhar. Also, one note for the people who are joining in for the first time and for the regular attendees as well, that in this session we'll take up questions simultaneously. So we'll give out few minutes after 10 to 15 minutes for question and answer. So we'll read out your questions for you and Chandrasekhar will answer your question. So you can put in your questions in the question tab on the right hand side. So over to you, Chandrasekhar.
All right, thank you so much, Divya, and it's so awesome to be here, all of you. I hope everyone can hear my voice clearly, and if you can't, please do let us know, and we'll make sure that we come in more clearly. I started my 2017 on a very crazy note with a winter cold, so my voice is going to sound a little nasal. So I want to apologize in advance. My name is Chandrasekhar, and I work with the Google Hyderabad office in India, and I work as a Google display product expert and I work primarily with the Google Display Network on that front. But I also have a little bit of an exposure on DoubleClick, so I'm happy to take questions across the board for these two product areas. But before we begin, I'd like to quickly jump into a quick view of the agenda of what we're going to cover in the next 30 minutes. Again, I want to add that this is going to be more of a discussion. I'm going to just share some of my experiences as a product expert on display, apart from having worked with advertisers primarily in North America and UK, but also a little bit in India. So that said, I do live in Hyderabad, so I have a lot of a good idea of what we do in India as well. So open to taking questions there as well, and hoping to share some of my experiences there. So please feel free to ask any question at any point of time, and Divya and I will ensure that we try and answer as many as we can. Also, we will have a Q&A towards the end, so if you feel that you can hold it off until the end, that's great as well. So in the next 30 minutes or so, what I really want to talk to you guys about is change across the board, across the ecosystem, across a lot of different places that's really affecting the way business functions and hence affects the way we actually now design our marketing strategies. Now, the change in itself can be good, can be bad. So we talk a little bit about those little changes that sometimes go unnoticed and how that's affecting strategies around the world, and with some examples, of course. Now, when it again comes to examples, we'll also talk about how it influences your business in terms of how your consumers are behaving differently, and more importantly, how does that make it more pertinent for you to change your display campaign strategy or alter it, adapt it to those changing scenarios. We will then talk about how at least each of us in this room, I'm sorry I mentioned room, but each of us on this call can actually make the most of that situation. How can we leverage that? You be first movers, to be honest, in a certain way, where we can actually take advantage of that. So we talk a little bit about that. And through Google Spirit, this is when I would cue in Google to talk about how Google solutions on ads, on bids, and so on can actually make a difference or help you achieve that goal. That's pretty much the objective there. And finally, where do we go from here? So that's something that we'll talk about in the next 30 minutes. And please let us know if you have any questions midway. Okay, now the other thing that I'm hoping as a presenter you will be able to take away from this discussion is a few ideas that you can use in your next big display opportunity, the next time you work with an advertiser your own, or if you're working with an external client. The idea that you can use ideas which you can probably try and test out in your next big display campaign or in the next big campaign design that you're working on, or probably something that you're working on right now. So hopefully some of these ideas will seem relevant to that. The second thing that I'm hoping is, and this is an area which is very close to my heart. I work as a trainer within this company, which means I work with a lot of people who join Google and work on display advertising for the first time, and I'm sure that's going to be true for a lot of you on the call. I want to make sure that everybody takes away the fact that display advertising isn't as complex as it's made out to be. It's actually very simple, and if you apply a little bit of very, very simple marketing knowledge to, let's say, whatever it is that complex infrastructure we talk about, there is a way you can pull out a simple thread that connects all of those features, all of those tools, all of those tags that we keep talking about. And I hope I can touch upon the simplicity of Display Network as a solution and how you can take that back to your business. And finally, I want to make sure that there is more love for Google Display Ads. As a product specialist, I end up working with a lot of clients, and more often than not, I mean, I hear a 50-50, 40-60, 60-30 when it comes to their love for Google, but the unanimous across the board, everybody loves the fact that Google Display Ads more often than not helps people meet their marketing goals. And I'm going to share some of those examples, and hopefully that's something that will reflect with your stories as well. So again, if you have stories and if you have examples from your own experiences, please do share that. We can also take that offline. All right. Now, at the start of the session, I said we're going to talk a little bit about change. And more often than not, most of us are very, very resistant to change. And if anything, the recent changes that have happened in the environment, and I know what you're thinking. I'm thinking about the exact same thing. I'm talking about demonetization, right? The changes that have happened in the ecosystem with us have shown us, if one thing, that change, when it comes with more friction, becomes very, very difficult to deal with. And change can only be internalized when the associated channels, the associated avenues, the associated tools that come with it actually abolish friction. And we're going to talk a little bit about change that's happening in the ecosystem right now. In fact, we're going to keep it very simple. We're going to talk about three very simple things. The first, as you can guess from the picture, is we're going to talk about how a smartphone, a very simple device, the kind of disruption it has brought into the ecosystem, to our lives, to businesses around the world. You can think of any vertical, any industry in the world, and mobile specifically as a device has been causing disruption, be it through Uber, be it through Airbnb, be it through even YouTube, be it through any of those different products that we use on a daily basis. It's causing disruption, and every vertical, every retail industry, every industry, retail, sports, whatever it is going through that. Then we're going to quickly jump into, if you can guess from this, I'm sure a lot of you would have probably even been here in person. This is Times Square, known for nothing other than ads, but more than that, also known for clutter. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's affecting the creatives or the ad format space, and what can we learn there. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about programmatic. When it comes to programmatic, it's a term that's often used in the wrong sense, in the right sense, but it's definitely used everywhere. Now, we're going to talk about we're going to do a little bit of myth busting over there to talk about, hey, what does programmatic actually mean, and what it can actually mean for your business, more importantly. So quickly diving into mobile ads. I want to talk to you about a very, very simple concept that we actually work on when we talk to our advertisers that helps us decipher a lot of changes that are happening in businesses today. And if you look at the screen right now, what I'm essentially trying to talk about is a very complex, let's say, relationship that we have with not just all the devices that we use, but the way in which we use them. So think about it. You could be waiting for your cab and at that time listening to music on an app, which probably lets you buy music on a monthly subscription basis. And it could effectively tell you, hey, you know what, there's this global rock concert that's happening right around the next couple of weeks. Do you think that's something that you would like to go for? Next thing you know, you're reading articles about the concert, you're going from blog to blog, you're looking at posts, and at some point of time, you're going back to looking at a video. But in general, you move from point A to point B or point E to point F. At some point of time, your interactions become less and less predictable. And that is where the beauty of consumer journey itself lies. Understanding consumer journey on how they interact with not just your products, but with the device that they use on a daily basis. A lot more about where we can insert our brand, where we can insert our product in a useful and utilitarian manner. We call this multiple moments, and these are moments where somebody wants to know something, somebody wants to go somewhere, somebody wants to do something, somebody wants to buy something. And this is a narrative that we as a company have strongly believed in, because we feel that the user always comes first. And when we understand what a user wants in the moment, beautiful results, beautiful solutions, beautiful designs emerge out of that. And we call this as a very, very beautiful unison of intent, context, and relevancy, or being there at the right time. So immediacy is another word that you can think of. And we call it micro moments. And there is no other way we can define or create an exhaustive list of micro moments, because that's how dynamic consumer journey is. But the one factor that's really driving all of this is the fact that every consumer that we have right now who's logged in on the internet, or at least a great percentage of that, is doing it through a smartphone, especially in a place like India, where we're looking at broadband penetration going hand in hand with smartphone penetration, or at least a high-end device penetration. And when you have these two penetrations going parallelly, what it tells you is a lot of people are accessing the internet through the mobile device for the first time. For example, some of the surveys, and I'm sure some of you have come across these surveys before, when asked in tier 4, tier 5 cities what the internet was, very few people could answer. But the minute you go into the conversation of, hey, do you know what Google is, or do you know what WhatsApp is, the conversation becomes a lot easier. So a lot of people are exposed to the internet for the first time through a smartphone or a device that can connect them to the internet, actually. So that's what is causing micro moments, and that's something that I want to talk about on how businesses are today using these micro moments. Now, if you talk about the explosion of smartphones globally, or this is global data I'm looking at, but typically if you have to look at this, and this is obviously 2014, and that number has changed in the last couple of years, but if you look at the gap between the green line and the yellow and the gray line, you can clearly see the massive difference that's the exponential growth that's happening. And this is not news to any of you. But I want to go deeper into this data point to talk about something more, let's say, relevant to our business. Let's not just think about smartphone growth, but time spent on these devices, because we've come to a stage where almost every second person who's logging onto the internet has a phone in their hand. What are they doing with it? How are they spending their time? And more often than not, our focus tends to be very, very heavily tilted towards apps. We kind of assume that, hey, you know what, apps is the future, and apps is where all the action is. But if anything, the recent changes that have happened in the ecosystem, if some of you are aware of progressive web apps, where a lot of big retail clients in India are now slowly adopting it, we realized over a period of time that the minute you add another layer of looking at where commercial tasks or most of the commercial activity is happening, the story suddenly skews heavily in favor of sites and not apps. Now, sorry, just give me a second. All right, back to the discussion. So if you put the context of how app and MWeb itself is, and MWeb itself is behaving, we realize that a lot of that is happening because MWeb is where most of the commercial activity is happening. Quickly jumping in. So this leaves us with two options. I mean, if these are the changes that are happening in the ecosystem, this leaves us two questions. A, you can either extend your desktop strategy to mobile, or you could create a mobile-specific strategy. Now, let's talk about the first. Now, reaching audiences across screens is one of the most simple ways in which, at least on the GDN, you can extend the reach of your campaigns. And automatically, it gives you access to almost 32% more impressions and 21% more conversions. These are obviously benchmarks that are held across the globe and vary from industry to industry. But the takeaway over here is, it's not as difficult as it may sound, creating a strategy for mobile devices, because all of your existing strategies and ideas on display have relevancy across screens, and it's just a few things that you have to tinker here and there to make it relevant for all screens. And we'll talk a little bit about what those features are in the course of this discussion, so hold off on that. But the reason being, the factors or the signals that go into identifying audiences across these devices, identifying consumer insights, is scaled to such an extent where we can distinguish between intent and actual passion, that we're able to find the right audience for your business at any given point of time. And that is what gives the unique ability, and I can speak for Google Display Network, but this is true for display in the industry overall, where scaling your ideas from desktop to mobile have become way more easier. All it needs is a little more intent from your end as a business to be able to design the right experience for your users on mobile devices. And that's exactly what brings me to the conversation about web and apps, because we are no longer living in a world where these are two isolated entities or two isolated assets, and there has to be an integration between these two for success on mobile display. And this is what we are seeing as the next big change that's happening on the display. It's happened already. It's been about a year since we've gone through the boom, the mobile explosion that's happened. But what we are seeing right now is more and more integration or unifying of solutions across big advertisers, which is giving them the opportunity to reach users with the unified message across all devices. And that's what is resulting in incremental conversions, which can only be measured when we think of attribution. Attribution works when you have a unified strategy across devices, across experiences. Now, an example that I want to bring up over here, something that probably a lot of you would have used, is talking about a client that we worked with, Foodpanda. Now, Foodpanda, as you all know, is a food delivery app. It's something it's a global app. It's found in multiple markets, but in India, it's pretty big as well. And what they actually realized over a period of time was, we keep talking about app downloads all the time, and Foodpanda was one of our early customers that at least I worked with, that focused on app re-engagement, because more, as you're all aware, almost 84 to 90% of apps that end up getting downloaded, you don't necessarily go back to them the second or third time. And it takes a little bit of push, a little bit of coaxing, a little bit of app re-engagement to actually get users back. And what they saw was 70% of their app sales were able to surpass at least the desktop they were able to surpass the desktop remarketing campaign sales volume as a result of focusing on a unified solution on their mobile device. Now, quick summary of what we can learn here, everything that we discussed. Micro moments on the mobile device have caused consumer journey to become a lot more granulated and become way more relevant, and that defines the field of play for your advertising. Unless you have a design that talks to this consumer journey, identifies at what stage what your user expects, your mobile strategy or your display strategy on mobile is going to be ineffective. This is hence the currency in which you measure the opportunity of advertising on mobile display. For instance, if you are an advertiser who is at an early stage of their product life cycle, this is where you realize at what stage the micro moment that your user in is where you can step in to provide some kind of utility. And if you're providing some kind of utility, you're also filtering for intent. For example, we talked about influence consideration as one of the marketing objectives, something that you would have discussed in your marketing classes. But influence consideration effectively means you're talking to an audience that is looking for information. More often than not, our strategies tend to be fairly overwhelming in what we expect as an action from the user. What I'm trying to say here is, when it comes to a granulated consumer journey, we need to identify what the user really wants in each of those marketing objectives, and filtering for intent is where your advertising becomes particularly effective. If you have worked with the Google Display Network at some point of time, what I'm really talking about is a targeting type like in-market segments. In-market segments, what it does is it filters for an audience who is in market based on certain behavioral signals that we aggregate and study over a period of time. And that gives us the ability to identify users who are closest to the moment of purchase. We spoke a little bit about apps. Apps are nice and shiny, but remember, web is where all the action is, which means if you have a pathetic web experience, a pathetic web experience, your users are more often than not going to have a disjointed view of how they want to interact with you as a customer. And this is where in the marketing funnel, users tend to drop off. And that's when you have to use tactics like app remarketing, app re-engagement to bring them back. But the idea is that a unified strategy across apps and web is what gives the uplift that your business really needs when it comes to advertising on the display network. Finally, I'm bringing this back again because talking about micro moments, we keep focusing on reach, we keep focusing on acquiring new customers, but in the moment, in the micro moment, if I go back to the discussion about what a user wants to do something, a user wants to be somewhere, whether it's using a location to navigate to a particular point, or whether it's calling someone and talking to someone. Making sure that, or if it's downloading an app to get a better sense of what your business has to offer, be it customizing a pizza or be it customizing a car loan, whatever it is, the utility that you offer as an advertiser to each of these users who associate with you, or who try to reach out to you in those micro moments of need, is where the success of your business lies. So I'm going to pause for a couple of seconds, and I'm going to let Divya take a quick look at the questions to see if there is any question that you might have about what we discussed, or we jump into the next segment.
Sure. So we have got some question. One is a request for the presentation and recording. We'll surely share out the recording and presentation to you over an email by Tuesday. So I'll just take a look at the question.
Absolutely. In fact,
And we have,
what we will also do is we will make sure that all of the speaker notes are captured, so everything that we spoke about is also on the deck.
sure. And we have a question from Usha. So if you think apps are where the actions happen, why did some big e-commerce websites go back to relaunching their mobile website? Are apps the future or are mobile sites?
I'm sorry if I wasn't being clear. If you look at point 4, I'm kind of agreeing with you, Usha. Apps are nice and shiny, but web is where all the action is. What I'm saying is, and what you're saying is absolutely correct. All the big retail clients that actually went back to progressive web apps. And I said progressive web apps, I'm actually referring to their customized look on web. I'm not talking about apps. So in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit about progressive web apps towards the end of this slide so you can read a little bit about it. But I completely agree with you. And what I'm trying to say here is apps may not be the future if we are not backing it with the right experience on web, because users don't particularly care about where they're getting the information from, and depending on the micro moment that they are in, the need is going to be satisfied based on how quickly an advertiser can get to satisfying that need. So if it's web, it's web. If it's app, it's app. There are certain advertisers who are tuned particularly for apps. Like I could think of a mutual funds app, something that cannot be done on web because that's where credentials becomes a continuous roadblock in making sure that users can log in. But for something, and that's true for a lot of big retail clients as well. But something like a Book My Show, for that matter, where an app is particularly not I mean, the experience that a user has can be compared equally on apps and web. Both are equally beautiful, both are equally awesome. But at some point of time, a user, depending on where they are, what moment they are in, might typically access through web. Google is a perfect example for that. A lot of people don't necessarily use the Google app to actually get their questions, but still go back to web to get it. So web and apps both go together, and a unified solution is the future.
Sure. Moving to next question, that's from Deepak. He's asking, in my experience with people. Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So in my experience with Facebook ads, I've seen that desktop users are of higher quality than mobile users. I've completely stopped mobile ads. I promote online courses. How do I leverage mobile users the right way?
That's a great question, because this is something that we've been hearing a lot even on our end. And to be honest, I would like to go back. I might sound like a broken record here, but I'd like to go back to the original point about consumer journey. I've, in my experience working with a lot of customers in Google, seen that there can be a lot of different interpretations of how our consumers behave at different stages of this consumer journey. And a lot of the reasons why our mobile users don't tend to be as effective or as qualified, as you put it, on desktop is because we tend to associate the wrong value or the wrong expectation from a user who's coming from mobile device. A linear or a singular view of a user for a specific device can be a big risk, because think about it, each of us who are advertisers or marketers at some level are also users. We don't become very different people when we use two different devices. Why should the quality of us as users be different? What changes is the way we adapt to a particular device, or what we expect when we are on a particular device. For instance, if you think of even 4 years ago, not even 4, I'm going back 6 years, 2011 World Cup. If you remember the finals, you had almost everyone in your family, all your friends sitting in a room and looking at a screen when Dhoni hit that final six to win us the game. But 2015, when we had the World Cup, I don't remember the same thing happening, not just because we didn't really do a great job there, but also because we were having we now had access to so many apps, so many web applications, which could let us view content at our own pace and at our own speed. I mean, think about it. The disruption that something like Netflix is bringing into the ecosystem, it's causing cord cutters, and right now we're talking about cord nevers, people who don't even have a cable connection. Does that mean that these are not people who consume media? They do consume media, but not in the way that you and I did probably 10 years ago, 5 years ago. They do it in a way that is a lot more dynamic, and the expectation from the device is a lot different. And that's assigning the right value to that behavior allows for a much more robust attribution model down the funnel. And that's something that we need to talk about. So I would encourage you to revisit the expectation that you have from users on your mobile, and ask yourself if for the consumer journey that your consumers are in, what role does your interface on the mobile device, your user experience on the mobile device play, and then revisit this question. But that's a very, very valid question. It's something that the industry is trying to get right, and in my opinion, this is how it goes forward, in assigning the right value, the right expectation from the user, and then associating the quality that comes with it. Okay,
Thank you.
we will jump into the next segment. Thank you so much, Divya. But we will take questions towards the end. But in the interest of time, we'll jump into the next segment, if that's okay, Divya.
Sure, sure.
All right. But please don't worry. We will make sure that we answer all questions towards the end. Okay. Now, we spoke a little bit about how mobile devices are disrupting the ecosystem, and what I'm trying to also do is keep a thread of all of these things that we're talking about across all of these features that we're going to introduce now. And I want you guys to stay with me here, because now we're going to talk about ads, and this is something that I passionately believe in. The reason I have started working for display advertising and have a deep passion for display advertising particularly is it typically brings the three entities of the internet, the publisher, the user, and the advertiser together to keep the internet free. And I'm a big lover of the internet, and I totally believe in the fact that if we did not have display advertising, the internet wouldn't have looked the way it does today. It wouldn't have been as democratic as it does today, and that's still a safe space for us. Hopefully, it'll stay that way for time to come. But ads is what keeps the internet free, and I want to talk a little bit about what's happening there. The example I mentioned earlier about how ads don't look anything like they used to. This is probably a good example. I mean, back in the day, this is something that we would all associate ourselves with. Mahabharat comes at 9 a.m. in the morning, and everyone in the house is sitting and watching. So when an ad comes in between, everyone's still clued in, because it's probably something that appeals to all of us. But that doesn't happen anymore. We see ads being so much more customized, so much more tailored, and not just ads online or ads on YouTube, but even ads on television. You go to ESPN Info, or sorry, ESPN versus a Star Plus or a Star Gold, and you do see the difference in the way ads are treated, the difference in the way ads are actually targeted, and that's something that the industry has grown to acknowledge definitely in the last decade or so. Because the one term that everyone's afraid of, the one term that every marketer is afraid of, is ad clutter. And that's slowly becoming a concern for the digital advertising space, especially display. So before we jump into that, if some of you have been working with display advertising for as long as you remember this ad, then we should definitely have a chat offline, because I'd love to hear your experiences. This is an ad back from 1994, and this is credited as, I think, the earliest banner ad that ever appeared on the internet. And this was an AT&T commercial, which was again something that led to more video advertising on their end. But this was what kept the internet free back in 1994. Now, just take a wild guess in your mind of what could have been the CTR of an ad like this. Now, if any of you thought within the range of the benchmarks that you're mostly used to, then you're going to be in for a surprise, because this is what the CTRs looked like back then. And I'm particularly not just talking about this ad, but banner advertising in general was typically used to very, very high CTR numbers because everyone was clicking on ads. And that was not necessarily a good thing because a lot of advertisers saw very high effective CPMs back in the day. And display advertising in general was not a performance solution for most of these advertisers. And now we typically see a benchmark of zero point 0.1, and this is a global benchmark, not specific to a platform. It doesn't vary greatly across platforms, to be honest. Obviously, when you add the layer of format, when you add the layer of geography, when you add the layer of demographic, these do alter, but we've come down significantly. But the good thing that has happened as a result of this is the effective CPMs that we are now looking at have shrunk considerably. Advertisers are seeing a lot more value in their ad dollars coming in from display. Now, quickly jumping into the three areas that I want to talk about. The three areas of concerns with ads today is viewability, ad fatigue, and ad blocking. Yes, I spoke about ad blocking. We'll talk about that in a little while. But quickly getting into viewability, if you didn't already know, there's almost 50% plus of all ads that are actually served on the display network. This is a research that Google did in partnership with IAB and a bunch of other guys a couple of years ago to find out that most of the ads that the advertisers get charged for are not completely seen. So they could be below the fold, or they could be at some point of time not in the same zone as you would want your user to be. And that's where most of the ineffectiveness on display advertising today exists. Typically exists somewhere between 46 to 52, depending on the vertical that you're in. But the takeaway here is that content is king, that content on the display network, especially for the ads that you are serving, ensures that you get the right viewability. That said, there are a lot of changes that are happening on the ecosystem right now. For example, Google Display Network ads are now embedded with viewability, which means that Google Display ads, when they are served, advertisers are only charged based on viewability. And viewability has a definite definition, which means that only and only when the ad is above the fold, or 50% and above the ad is above the fold for 2 seconds, do we actually charge the advertiser. And when that happens, we are effectively ensuring that advertisers are not charged for non-viewable ads. And this is slowly becoming an industry norm. We started it with GDN. It's now part of the DoubleClick ecosystem as well. And we're slowly seeing this getting adopted across the ecosystem. But the takeaway here is that viewability has become a big concern, a big issue on the display network. And as display advertisers, as marketers, it's really important to keep track of ads and their effectiveness through viewability. Because we spoke about viewability, I want to talk about a second element that comes with it, and this is an ad format that some of you would have come across in the recent in the last few months. We're talking about responsive ads. This is something that Google introduced in the last quarter, where we're now talking about taking the heavy lifting of creating ads that suit specific devices or specific ad slots away from the advertiser. What we're now telling is, hey, we're making life simpler for you. We're bringing in more automation into display ads. You give us the assets, you give us your messaging, and we will ensure that we create the ads in such a manner that it's be it text, be it image, or be it native. And native is becoming a big buzzword on the display ecosystem right now. We will ensure that all of these are factored for, and you get the most out of your ads. And we're already seeing 40% more conversions coming from these ads because we are now reaching more relevant audiences, but we're also doing it in a smarter manner. And we're also increasing our reach as a result of better viewability and better device access. We spoke about ad blocker, and that's the third concept, or the third big area of discussion when it comes to ad creatives that I want to talk about. So Google actually was part of a massive study that the Internet Advertising Bureau undertook, and we found that 26% of users across the board tend to use ad blockers, either partially or entirely. And as a result, what we've agreed on right now is something called a lean ad standard. We will be sharing a lot more information about this and research in the deck towards the end of this program. But what I want you to take away from this is talking about ads that are non-evasive, ads that are not disruptive, and at the same time, ads that are light. Because remember, if you tie this back to the other change that's happening on the ecosystem with users shifting to mobile devices, the need for ad blockers, at least on the users end, becomes a lot more critical because data is not as cheap as we still want it to be. Devices also don't necessarily have the same level of compatibility across all OEMs, across all carriers. So that's where we see ads becoming somewhat of a roadblock, and that's where we see a lot of adoption going towards ad blockers, and which is what we want to check. Ad blocking on mobile devices is still relatively lower. It's under 20%. But what we are seeing is there is a growing trend over there. And that's where a lot of advertisers who believe in non-disruptive, very high quality ads on the display network are coming together to come up with this ad standard. In fact, to just give you a quick sense of a user survey that was done, most of the users who actually felt that they would want to block an ad was when the ad was either blocking the content or whether it was a long video ad before a short video, things like that. And as you're aware, at Google, we are also working on a lot of different ad formats across mobile and especially on video ads, which are trying to be, we spoke about native ads earlier, but you're all familiar with skippable ads, which we also call TrueView, which ensure that the choice goes back to the user in determining what kind of content they want to be exposed to, what content they want to skip. And that's also good for the advertiser because we're charging advertisers based on engagement and not based on the fact that their ads were simply served. Now, a quick summary of all the changes that, or all the disruptive factors that are happening as a result of ad blockers. Ad creatives now focus on giving more control back to users, and ad creatives have a streamlined UX across all devices. Also, we are making sure that advertisers, publishers have certain site safety concerns met, which means users who get onto a publisher site are not freaked out by safety concerns, and that's where quality of ads becomes so much more significant. And remember this, everyone loves the internet. At some point of time, everyone wants to keep the internet free, which is why, think about it, it's a simple message that you want to tell your customers. As a publisher, you want to tell them that they understand that you're not here for ads, but at some point of time, you need to support content, you need to support journalism, and if ad quality can be non-invasive and non-disruptive, the ecosystem can actually endure this and move forward. And there are plenty of strategies that can help get users back to stop using ad. Just one point that I want to talk about here, just going back a little. If you focus on the pie chart, 20% is actually users who had ad blocker at some point but did come back. In fact, internally, here we're seeing a lot more users being very, very happy with the fact that we have the skip button on TrueView videos, which is allowing users to have a much better experience in the way they absorb content. And there can be a lot of success by implementing these quality strategies to ensure that we write better ads, and better ads alone can break ad clutter. We focus on newer solutions, newer formats like native advertisements, which are slowly setting the standard for ad creatives, if you think of it. And these are also ad formats that bring in more viewability and more, let's say, effective advertising. Third thing I want to talk about is creatives are not effective unless they talk to the specific micro moment. Remember, we spoke about micro moments. I'm bringing that back. I'm using that as a thread across this conversation, that users are going to judge, or users are going to respond depending on the micro moment that they're in. And if there is no utility in your creatives, then they are not going to even look at it, ad blocker or no ad blocker. There can be a lot of disruptive strategies that advertisers are adopting on the web that are bringing those users back, preventing use of ad blockers and so on. There is a beautiful study from the Advertising Bureau, the Internet Advertising Bureau, which we will share post this session. I urge you to actually look at some of those examples to take some of those strategies for the way you design your ad creatives as well. And more importantly, remember this, that viewability is something that really saves you ad dollars. Google's betting big on viewability. All our ad formats, especially the ads that are sold on CPM, have viewability as a default option, which means advertisers don't have to worry about the lack of, let's say, ads which are probably ineffective. We make sure that we don't charge them on that. We charge them only basis viewability. All right, I'm going to quickly jump into programmatic in the interest of time, and we're going to take questions towards the end, so please hold off your questions. Divya, is that okay with you?
Yes, just fine. You can do the presentation first.
Yeah, I'm conscious of the fact that I've gone over time, so I'm going to quickly jump into this very beautiful quote that came in, and I want to use the next 5 minutes to talk about a very simple concept, programmatic. It's become the buzzword. Everybody wants it, but nobody knows what it really is. I'm not saying all of that's true for all of you. Obviously, all of you here have had experience with programmatic, but definitely working with advertisers, working with agencies, working even with sellers, we hear the term programmatic being thrown around multiple times, and I want to take away one myth today, if I can, that programmatic, in the context of the ecosystem that we have evolved with in the entire journey that is from all the way from 1994 to today in 2017, a lot of the complexity that could have come in or could have crept into the ecosystem was resolved as a result of programmatic. And the reason being, programmatic is nothing but a unification of all your strategies across platform, devices, the kind of deals that you're making with publishers, with sellers, with platforms, and finally the inventory that you're getting access to, be it video inventory, search, social, or premium display. All of this, it's a simple unification. And all that we're doing right now across all the platforms that we use in the programmatic ecosystem is we're bringing in simplicity. And simplicity comes in through automation. When you have automation in the form of bidding, in the form of analyzing user behavior, pulling data and insights and giving it back to an advertiser, and making sure that bids go in real time. We talk about RTB in the same context as programmatic. The idea is to reach as much qualified inventory as possible through automation. And it's as simple as that. The automation is taken care of by the tool, by the ad tech, and everything else is behind the scenes. All you need to do as an advertiser is have clear goals. And once you have clear goals, a platform that gives you access to all of that inventory in an automated manner and unifies it for you is essentially programmatic. And in that perspective, some of you who would have worked with the Google Display Network and have set up campaigns on the Display Network would know that we have all of these solutions on Google Display Network as well. So typically, Google Display Network also allows you to give dynamic messaging. We have dynamic ads. We'll talk a little bit about that in a while. But effectively, you can automate all of your display solutions at the click of a button. And we're coming up with newer and newer ad formats, newer and new campaign segments, newer and newer campaign tools that allow you to automate all your spend on the Google Display Network as much as you can. At some point of time, we are ensuring that, in fact, we call this, we want to make sure that everything is self-driven, if you think of it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about auto formats. So we spoke about responsive ads. Think of responsive ads as auto formats. These are essentially ads that are sizeless, and you don't really have to worry about size and formats anymore. We will ensure that we take your assets, we take your description, we take your messaging, and we make sure that we customize it depending on the device you're going on. So it ensures that you reach new inventory without the additional overload that goes into, or the additional overhead that goes into creating those ads. So programmatic is anything which allows that simplified view of all your data and ensures that you reach you reach your user in the most cohesive, in the most unified manner possible. And any platform that actually does that for you is programmatic. And it's not as complicated as you might then think of it. Jet Airways is actually a beautiful example of an advertiser that worked with us. Some of you who would have set up dynamic remarketing campaigns would know how it works. It's a very simple feed-based mechanism where Jet Airways actually connects some of their inputs with their own AdWords campaigns. And what it enables them to do is create extremely customized, extremely powerful messages in the form of reaching out to users for specific locations. For example, if you're a user who was traveling from Bombay to Delhi, and at some point of time, Jet Airways wants to come back and tell you, hey, you know what? If you're going back from Delhi to Bombay, we have this amazing deal. We have this amazing flight that you can choose. That is the ability that, and it's very simple to enable. That's the ability that the Google Display Network gives advertisers today in combining automation across bidding, creatives, and like I mentioned earlier, in the way you reach your audience. And so all of this combined becomes programmatic. And again, the quick takeaway over here, I'd just like to quickly breeze through this for a while, is that GDN is programmatic. Programmatic is a very, very simple solution. Anything that integrates automation with data is programmatic. Automation can think faster and way better than 1,000 hands on deck. You could put your entire team to go and figure what your bid strategy should look like, but automation is the way forward. We have automated solutions on GDN, on DoubleClick, on all of the platforms. So make sure you're making the most of automation, because that is what will define how successful your strategies will be in future, because it gives you the free time to go back to talk about consumer journey, identifying what's broken at that stage, at a root stage, creating designs that talk to those micro moments. And all of that can only happen if your bandwidth, if the way you look at campaign management today is automated. Feed-based advertising obviously extends this automation to creatives, and more importantly, keeps ads sizeless. And that's pretty much the three stories that I wanted to talk about. But I wanted to close with a very, very simple thought, and I'm going to take just another minute. Remember this, all of these changes that are happening in the ecosystem, they've been happening for almost a year now, and it's glacial, but it's happening. It's taking its own time. A lot of advertisers are adopting, jumping out, jumping back in again, because nobody gets their act the first time, especially when it comes to mobile. But the idea is that there is a lot of opportunity, and I want to zoom out into a big shift that's happening in the ecosystem, at least in the market that I work with in the US, where we are seeing digital ad spend, the weight slowly shifting from search to display. And that's a big shift that's happening, and in future is going to continue to happen in the same way. I unfortunately don't have the exact numbers that talk to the story in India. But in India, digital advertising itself is growing at a furious pace. We are looking at almost 40% of all digital spend coming in from digital. All media spend coming in from digital right now, and that's massive. That's unthinkable. 40% of the growth is contributed by that. In future, we are going to see a lot of that play out in the same way global display spend is playing out as well. So this is a really good time for all of you people on the call to be first movers and make sure that you learn from all of those changes that are happening in the ecosystem and how advertisers are adopting them, and see if you can try those out early, because as a first mover, you get the advantage of trying and failing and then succeeding again. So this is the time. The time is now. The future is now. Make sure that you're making the most of it. This is pretty much how the ad dollars, at least for the digital ad spend in India, is going to look like in 2017. So this is a great estimate and a great prediction to begin the year with. Hopefully, most of you on this call have a simple view, have a clean view of everything that we spoke about on tying micro moments, on tying them back to automated solutions. You can use Google Display Network, you can use DoubleClick, but you can continue to also leverage these ideas in whatever platforms you choose to invest in. Remember, we're speaking about the ecosystem, something that's universal. So that's pretty much, if I have to summarize all of this into two very simple contexts, make sure that your advertising captures your audience intent and puts it in the right context and scales it through automation. And this is where I think I'll stop to take questions, and I'm very conscious that I'm over time, so I'm happy to actually take questions beyond the scope of this discussion.
Sure. Thank you so much for the session. Before picking up the questions, I would request everyone who's having a question to put in their query in the questions tab on the right hand side. And I'm also launching out a poll for people who are interested in getting a digital marketing course. You can just fill in the form with a yes or a no, or if you're already a participant, our team will get in touch with you with all the details of the course we have at Digital Vidya. So moving and shifting to the questions, we have a question from Ramesh. He's saying, do you have any example of B2B tech service companies who have leveraged display ads and derived value? If so, can you share some details?
Definitely. I have worked with a bunch of clients, but I can share the details of that offline if that's fine. I mean, when we share the resources, I'll make sure that I share it with that. Is that okay? I've worked with a couple of clients, especially in India. We worked with Freshdesk. Freshdesk is actually one of the clients that I haven't directly worked with them, but one of my colleagues has. So I can definitely share some of the insights from his experience there. But I don't have that with me right now, but I'll definitely share that when we share the slides with you.
So
But
there's one question which is
if
from,
there is one
yes, you were saying.
insight that I would want to share with you, not specific to a client, but there is one insight that I'd like to share with you is what happens with tech B2B clients more often than not is that the valuation of the different micro conversions that can happen on the website tends to go missed out more often than not. And I've seen this with really big clients in the US where let's say you're thinking of downloading a software for a trial period or adopting any ERP software for, let's say, a longer term based on a subscription, the conversion value is not necessarily going to look the same. What we tend to see is tech B2B clients are very heavy on automation, but they don't necessarily back it with the right valuation of conversion. Most of the tools that we have, at least inside GDN and even on DoubleClick, are sophisticated enough to actually read into the conversion valuation to identify where should they over-index on leads, what kind of leads should they over-index on, and that's where the success of automation truly comes in. It's a smart system that I can read into that information only if that information actually comes from the advertiser. And we see tech B2B being one of those verticals which is learning to do that finally. So that's one insight that I would share with you. But definitely also share a story on how their display advertising experience has been towards next week when we share the slides with you.
Moving to next question, it's from Kitchen. He's asking how marketing strategy differentiate between a desktop and a mobile ad.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Desktop and a mobile ad, how does marketing strategy differ? So marketing strategies don't differ. Marketing strategies connect in the sense when a user, so Google actually has this beautiful tool which allows you to draw your consumer journey, and I'm happy to share that towards the end of this program. It's called, if some of you work with Think with Google, we have something called a consumer journey creator, which lets you identify the journey of your consumer. Now, the whole idea of micro moments is that your users are going to not access or reach out to your business through one device. They're going to reach out to you through multiple devices. And when that happens, your advertising solution needs to be integrated. For instance, if you have a customer match solution on desktop where you're actually taking users who were part of a CRM list that you were invested in, we are ensuring that your solutions are unified across desktop and mobile to ensure that users get the same experience or at least comparable experience and get the right value that they expect from your business when they reach your device. Your strategies would differ based on the experience that you provide. So your user experience would have to be more responsive to the user. So the way you actually provide value or utility on your site will have to be more nuanced on your on your phone as opposed to desktop. So if I have to talk about marketing strategies being different, I would look at mobile being and some verticals an upper funnel solution where my marketing investment would be focused on driving more engagement and driving more consideration on mobile devices, where I would actually use mobile devices as a place where I am disseminating as much information as I can about my business. But at some point of time, I am going to see a lot of shift of users who have got that information onto desktop to actually complete a more valuable transaction in the form of a conversion. So that's where I would over-index on my drive action strategy, where I would actually look at lower funnel keywords because those users are more often than not going back to search or going to come back to display to actually look at a more refined approach of how they want to interact with your business. So it could be a difference in the segment of the funnel. It could be a difference in the way your user experience looks on these devices, but at the same time, they will have to be unified. In fact, most marketing tends to go awry when you try to have a differentiated solution on mobile versus desktop, because that results in the gaps where you probably tend to miss out a space of the consumer journey or the consumer experience where your user is in, and that's where you end up making some of those characteristic marketing mistakes where you tend to lose your customer, lose your user. That's where you're dropping the ball. So a unified strategy across both is what we're looking for.
Thank you very much. Moving to next question, it's from Agashta. He's saying, hello sir, I run a coupon code, promo code, price comparison website where people can compare prices before buying a product from very popular online retail sites like Amazon, Flipkart, Snapdeal. He just wants to know how can display advertising can help his site get more audience, and how about the cost factor when the ads are compared to Facebook.
So I'll answer the first part of the question. Typically, it looks like the customers that you deal with are in the research and the evaluation phase. This is right before they actually make a purchase. Now, here in Google, at least, where we have this beautiful audience, mid-funnel audience solution called in-market segments, which reaches out to users for specific products. It could be shopping-related products, it could be jobs, it could be education, it could be anything. I'd really encourage you to check it out on your own. But we have this product called in-market segments, which does exactly that. It actually targets, or it filters for intent and reaches to only those users based on the behavioral aspects of their browsing who are in the moment of purchase. So typically, you could use a product like that. You could also use a very, very simple solution called keyword contextual targeting to reach on a very, very flexible basis users who are particularly looking for deals, looking for coupons. So if you have worked with search advertising, think of it as a natural extension of what you're doing there on search, where all you're doing is essentially following the user from search down to content. You can use keywords, you can use in-market. These are the two solutions which I think would be really, really effective for your specific business area. When it comes to Facebook, I particularly don't work with Facebook advertising, and the way we actually measure ads on Facebook and the GDN are very, very different. For instance, I understand that on Facebook, a lot of the measurement is a combination of a view-through conversion and a regular conversion, or a last click conversion. And on GDN, we predominantly talk about last click conversions, but we also do mention view-through conversion. So we give a lot more flexibility to advertisers in the way they want to measure the end result. So if you're thinking of a cost question or a cost comparison between GDN and Facebook, I would actually add another layer and say we're looking at a cost benefit. When you think of cost benefit, the models that are adopted by advertisers on both Facebook and Google are very, very different, and that's why the comparisons can be all right. When it comes to app downloads, I understand that when it comes to Google Display Network, because we have a much better reach, it tends to be much lower. The cost per installs tend to be much lower, and app re-engagement ensures that the long-term value that you are driving from those app downloads also tends to be higher. So if on mobile, it's typically lower, if that's something that I can say. On video advertising, the way, again, measurement becomes a challenge, because the way we at YouTube measure video views is we look at either 30 seconds as a minimum threshold of the ad content being viewed, or we look at, let's say, somebody who's viewed the entire length of the video if the length of the video is less than 30 seconds. But when it comes to Facebook, that's a much smaller number. If I understand, it's somewhere between 3 to 5 seconds. So then measurement again becomes a challenge, and also the user experience on both these apps is also going to be different. So I would say that it's lower depending on the marketing objective that you are in versus the kind of measurement that model that you follow on Google, especially if you're a last click attribution customer and that you're focused extremely on ROI, extremely on performance, then Google tends to be lower.
Thank you very much. Moving to next question from Vijay. He's asking, how effective are Google display ads for a B2B firm? In my case, we are a service firm and we use social media, print for advertising. Do you think we can leverage display ads better as opposed to what B2C firms do?
Absolutely. In fact, what I would recommend is you start out with looking at something called Gmail ads, which we launched quite a while back. I think it's been more than a year. It's a very, very simple ad format, very, very easy to implement. We've seen a lot of so what it effectively lets you do is reach out to your potential customers on Gmail, which is part of our owned and operated property in the promotions tab. What I'll also do is I'll make sure that I have some collateral shared along with the slides, because this is not something that's B2B specific. It's something that can be of value to most verticals that are probably on this call. Gmail ads as a platform it allows you to also reach out to your customers based on your CRM data. So if you're a B2B customer with a rich CRM data, you can definitely make a good use of Gmail ads, and that's part of the Google Display Network ecosystem. And you can do the same on YouTube as well, not just through video ads, but through very simple text and image ads. So that's something that you can definitely do with very low cost, because it's still cost per click. You're not paying for impressions. You can make, if with very refined creatives and very specific targeting, in this case being as specific as reaching out to your CRM list, you can keep your costs really low and effective.
Thank you very much. Moving to next question, it's from Deepak. He's asking, can Google Display Ads auto-optimize itself for conversions? I'm experiencing a 1.3% CTR with Facebook ads with the optimized conversions, optimized ads. Can I get this much with Google Display Ads as well?
Sorry, was that CTR or CVR? Because if you're talking about optimizing for conversions, we would particularly be looking at conversion and conversion rate. So just want to clarify that. Is it CTR?
It's CTR, yeah.
Okay, so here's the split, at least on the Google Display Network. If you're talking about ROI, if you're talking about performance, we do have automated bid strategies. We allow you to actually input a specific acquisition cost called CPA, so your cost per acquisition, and allow you to basically tell us your CPA, tell us what kind of audience typically would be interested in your ads, and then we do most of the heavy loading. Most of the automation happens back end, where it looks at identifying the right audience for you and bidding real time to get you the best value for acquiring that audience. And that audience typically tends to convert at a much better rate than most of your display campaigns tend to. And that's one solution that you should definitely check out. Although I would encourage not focusing on CTR, because if you're looking at CTR, then you're looking at the rate at which traffic comes in and not necessarily the quality of audience. And if you're paying per click, then you have to look at the long term. If you're paying per click, your attributive model needs to also look at what is the long-term value of that audience that's coming in, how often do they convert, what is the average order value of the conversions that they bring in. And when that comes in, you have the automating solution that I spoke about, which is essentially using a target CPA, is way more effective than focusing on a much more upper funnel metric like CTR. But I will say that the CTR, that if you're getting a 1.3% CTR on Facebook, the next question to ask is, what ecosystem or what landscape are you getting it in? Is it within the Facebook ecosystem, or is it the Facebook audience network? In either cases, you're limited to a specific kind of audience, which is more interest driven. On the Google Display Network, I mentioned earlier about in-market segments, we have more intent driven, where we are not looking merely at users who are interested in a particular hobby or a particular product. We are also looking at people who have more intent driven browsing behavior. So people who are doing price comparison, people who are reading reviews, people who are looking at a particular page to get more information about how they can actually buy something, people who are actually looking at unboxing videos on YouTube. So when you attach intent, the relevancy of the ad automatically goes up. And if your creatives are as effective as they are on Facebook, I'm pretty sure that the CTR is going to be a lot better.
Thank you. Moving to next question, it's by Vivek. He's asking, how can we optimize a small budget account in short time?
That's a really good question. To be honest, as a campaign manager, I joined Google as a campaign manager, and in my initial years, I worked with advertisers in travel who did do a lot of display advertising, but with very small budgets. What I would encourage at this point is, if you have very small budgets, it's still important to split that budget between the targeting types that add value to your business. Because the one mistake I normally tend to see a lot of advertisers make is they tend to spend that entire budget, no matter what it is, on all targeting types in the same campaign. For example, if it's $100 or or 1,000 rupee or a 2,000 rupee per day campaign, what I see more often than not is targeting types like in-market, affinity, keyword, and remarketing all being part of the same campaign. What happens more often than not is one or more of those targeting types tends to overwhelm or overspend most of the budget, and that leads to a lot of conflict in the way you want to measure the success of that campaign, because not every targeting type gives you the same level of performance. It's not designed to do that. If you have a small budget campaign, begin by splitting your budget across targeting types. Make sure that one campaign does not have more than one targeting type. That will ensure that even with a small budget, your reach is not compromised. Once your reach is not compromised, the next thing to do is effectively use auto bidding or any kind of automation to give you that level of efficiency which you cannot get manually. So these are the two things that I would encourage. Split your budget across targeting types. For lower funnel, which is essentially keywords or remarketing, make sure you adopt auto bidding, which will give you the most efficiency for the kind of small budgets that you're talking about over here. And you will find yourself in a much better position to get returns out of these display campaigns than you did with a singular unified, like let's say a single campaign view, which most small budget display campaigns tend to look like. Now I'm just sharing my experience from having worked with such campaigns, but I'm sure that in the course of working with these campaigns, you will also see that the other area where you can actually leverage automation is creatives. So responsive ads, which actually make sure that your ads are very, very effective across devices. A lot of your budget tends to get spent across devices ineffectively, but using automated creatives, you can actually ensure that the right ad format is shown to the right audience on the right device. That also brings in efficiency to your overall spend. So make sure that that's something that you are definitely adopting. These three in combination should definitely give you a good head start. And I'm hoping, because that will add value to your business, you'll also be able to grow your budget. All right.
Yes, moving to next question. It's by Deepak, a different Deepak. He's asking, he wants to know about real
Hello.
estate.
I'm sorry, Divya. I think I lost you
Right.
in the last couple of seconds. Can you repeat the question? I got the question was from Deepak, but I couldn't hear anything after that. So could you please repeat your question?
Real estate clients. He's asking, should we target mobile devices for real estate? Should we target mobile devices for real estate, since we don't do it at this point?
I would say yes, because think of it this way. The reason we put ourselves in this question is because we sometimes, so if you put consumer journey out of this equation, the question we ask ourselves is, hey, I'm a real estate advertiser, should I invest in mobile? The question, although you should be asking, is my customer someone who uses a mobile device? Yes. If he does use a mobile device, what ways does he use his mobile device in? Does he use it to search for information? Does he use it to look for locations? Does he use it to consume video? Because regardless of who we are and where we are, there are some basic things that we interact with the internet, and that's consistent across consumers. Now, the layer of this question is then now asking yourself, is it possible that a lot of my users, a lot of my potential customers who could be looking at real estate dealings could be doing it through a phone because they're on the go? If yes, what kind of information would they be looking for? Is that the kind of information that I, as a real estate developer or a real estate lister, can provide? And in what format should I do it? When you answer these questions, you realize that mobile, whether I should invest in mobile or not, is no longer a question. The question is, how should I invest in mobile? And in your case, I would definitely think of mobile being one of those very, very pertinent points of information. For example, think of it this way. On search, we have this beautiful solution called location extensions, where you could effectively lead your ad into launching the map, the Google Map, and allowing users to navigate to a particular point. So if you're a real estate agent who also offers navigation to specific points which you are listing, you can also leverage the power of mobile. So the question is not should I do it, it's more of a how you should do it. And in your case, it looks like a mid-funnel strategy of providing the right information in terms of where these locations are, what are the amenities or what are the things that the user will have to take into account before actually proceeding with discussing more business with you. That's something a mobile device would be a perfect entry point for. In terms of display network, what I would say is a very simple solution would be keyword related targeting on display. We call it keyword contextual targeting, which will let you reach users when they're actually researching or finding out more information which typically can be provided by your business. I'm sorry, I hope I'm still
Yes,
online, and I hope, okay, perfect. All right. I
yes,
thought
I
I
can
lost
hear
you
you
guys for a
clearly.
second.
I was just reading out the question and I realized that I was on mute. So another question is from Ranjit. He wants to know, are there any tool to identify customer journeys? Do
Yes,
you
there
have
is.
any tool
I
in mind?
mentioned this earlier. Unfortunately, the tools, let's say, mature markets when it comes to online advertising, and not to say that India isn't there, but India is pretty much up there. You can use this tool called Consumer Journey, which is available on Think with Insight. Don't worry, I'll be sharing this with the deck as well, so you will be able to access it. But it's a very simple tool. What it lets you do is it lets you create a very custom model based on the vertical that you are in and the geography that you are closest to in terms of user behavior. So in our case, there are a bunch of Asian countries on that list which you can use for now. But I assure you that that's something that we're working on. We're making sure that we get more geographies there, and it gives you a beautiful view of consumer journey across end to end, essentially looking at where the display ad actually clicks. Where does it eventually flow into consumption on social? Social then includes video and all of that. Where does paid search come in, and when does the user finally go into the phase of loyalty? So it goes through, takes you through the entire consumer journey and lets you create one for your specific vertical. But we will definitely share that on the slides. If
Sure.
you're curious, you can go to Think with Google, which is you can just search for Think with Google, take you to the website, and you can look for the tool.
Moving to next question, it's from Rakesh. He's asking how Google Display Ads can help a small business entrepreneurs working in a particular area only.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat the last part of the question? I think I missed something there.
How Google Display Ads can help small businesses working in a particular area only.
So, am I to assume that the users would also be restricted to that particular area? If
Exactly,
that's
yes.
if that's the case, if that's the case again, I would say that a lot would go into the way you set up the campaign, because we do offer a lot of refined location, refined language targeting options on AdWords particularly. So, but I would still say that when it comes to Google Display Network, the way to begin would be, again, um, understanding what these users in that particular market would typically look for, and keyword contextual targeting would be a very easy and entry level strategy, but also very effective strategy. So if some of these advertisers that you're referring over here also work on search advertising, typically the best way to enter display network would be to extend this search strategy. Think of it this way: when we as users go to search for something, we stay there for about less than a minute, because the minute we find something relevant, we click on it, we go on to a page, which is more often than not a publisher page, and then we keep clicking until we actually get to the right information, or we have all the information that we need, which means you're you're essentially not doing justice to your business if you're not following the user from search. And if some of these advertisers that you're referring to actually have very good search strategies, extending them to display would be very simple. All you would need to do is extend these display campaigns by copying them across to a simple keyword contextual campaign, refining it a little to ensure that some keywords that are not relevant to display don't turn up, and making sure that you spend at least commensurate to what you spend on searches to ensure that you're reaching users or following users onto the display network. You will see a lot of positive results in the form of conversions, but you will also see a lot of traffic which will not convert. But over a period of time, if you're able to layer this with automation, you will be able to have the maximum efficiency stretched upward from that particular campaign or particular campaign strategies.
Great. Thank you so much. I think we should wind up this session. We are already running over time. So if we
Okay.
have missed any of your questions, we have missed some of the questions. I would recommend everyone to just let us know, and we'll get back to your questions over an email directly. And thank you so much, Chandrasekhar, for taking your time out. So there's one
Thank you to
request
the.
from,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, there's just one request from Ram. He wants his question to be taken, so I'll just read out this question. We'll
Yeah,
consider this
absolutely,
the
no
final
problem.
question.
Let's close with that
But
question then.
yes, Ram wants to ask with regards to online travel company, is it better to go with campaign by GDN or by Google Search Network? And which one is less expensive?
Hmm. So again, I'm going to sound awfully diplomatic when I say this, but your solution would be incomplete if you're not investing in both display and search. For the exact same reason that I spoke about last question, is your users don't necessarily behave the way your marketing campaigns do. They behave in the way they want to, which means your users would typically be looking for the cheapest price, but they would also be complementing that with as much information as they would need in making their final purchase decision. So if you're an online travel company and you're advertising on search, you're doing the right thing because you're reaching out to the users when they're actually comparing prices and finding the right deals. But these users are not going to stay on search for long. And at some point of time, they are going to continue their research on the display network on a publisher site somewhere. And at that point of time, if you miss those users, then you're definitely going to lose them to either a competitor or you're going to lose them in terms of time. And that's the kind of lag that usually slows businesses down. So search plus display is definitely something that you should be looking at. And when I say search plus display, I'm referring to totally different campaigns, not a hybrid campaign. So making sure you have a search only campaign and display only campaign is the only way forward. That said, in terms of how you would actually look at the value, your search campaigns can typically be valued much more lower the funnel, which means you can still be focused on getting more ROI out of those clients. So you're not looking at CPCs, you're not looking at CPAs. Similarly, on display, you can still focus on CPC. So in terms of cost, display can be way lower because it has access to more inventory. But in terms of value, search is going to be much higher. So you cannot choose to ignore one or the other, but you can definitely make sure that by keeping them in different campaigns, you can organize or allocate your budget in such a manner that you're able to get the maximum value out of both these campaigns. That's the only message I leave you with. But remember, if you are choosing one over the other, you are effectively, and this is something to probably everyone who's on the call, who's still with us on the call. If the question is, hey, should I advertise on mobile? Or if the question is, hey, should I advertise on search or display? What you're effectively translating that into is, hey, you know what? I have a bunch of consumers or potential customers, and they have a natural journey to how they actually get their end goal met, and that end goal can be me or can be my competitor. By choosing to ask whether it's search or display or whether it's mobile, what I'm effectively saying is there any part of the consumer journey where I would not want to be there or be of any use to my potential customer? And when you translate it in those terms, you realize that the question is not should I or how should I? It should be uh, how can I maximize it? The question is not should I, it should be how should I? All
Great.
right, I hope that
Thank you
answers the
so much.
question. I'd like to
Yes, it
thank
does.
Divya for all her help and support, and also Dipesh. But that said, let's keep this engagement with everyone who's on the call, even outside this presentation. Make sure you share your questions with us, and I'll do my best to answer them when we share the slides with you. And that would be next week. So until then, I hope all of you have a great weekend and a great start to the year.
Sure. Thank you so much. Bye bye, everyone. I also would like you all to register for another webinar, which is on the 20th. And I'm sharing out the details with you in the chat panel. If you guys are interested, it will be led by Virginia Sharma. She's from LinkedIn. And the topic is why content is increasing incredibly an indispensable skill for marketers. So I'm just sending out a link in the chat panel. You all can register for the webinar over here. Yes, the link is shared in the chat panel. We'll share
All right.
out the recordings with you by Tuesday and the deck and all the resources which Chandrasekhar was mentioning. So you'll get all the details over an email by Tuesday. Thank you, Chandrasekhar, for your time and efforts in the
And thanks for your
webinar.
team.
Thank you very much.